Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome. I am so excited to be able to see some attendees start joining today. Again, welcome. My name is Kate Sutherland. I am with JWB Real Estate out in Jacksonville, Florida. This is my second time being able to be introduced to this audience. And I am very, very grateful for the opportunity. As folks are starting to roll in here today, I want to just take a first introduction to be able to just wish all of our moms out there a happy Mother's Day weekend. Hopefully, everybody enjoyed their time. I know I have three young kiddos myself, and so I was woken up to yesterday with some big giant Mother's Day cards and just time with the family, which absolutely filled up my love bucket. So, of course, wanted to just wish the same upon everybody that is joining here in today's audience. Hello, nice to see you from Philadelphia. So excited that you're here. Love to see some of the little chats and Q&As coming through with folks that are just letting me know that I at least have done the first step of this, which is start. Hit start. We've got some names coming in here. Hello, Gabriel from Lancaster. Great to see you. I am a one gal show here, so I'm going to try to navigate the slides, the chat, and the Q&A. If you all wouldn't mind, as you continue to jump in, if you could place your actual questions in the question and answer, because that allows me to be able to kind of see them in one place. We have the chat there as well, but I will absolutely want to make sure that if I don't get to your question today, I have every opportunity to be able to get that chat after or the question and answer afterwards so that I can make sure that we get everything addressed. Hi, Robert. Great to see you from Cleveland. Wonderful. Okay. Well, I feel like we've got that part down. So I've got some folks coming in. So that's wonderful to see. Like I said, if you've got question and answers, please put them in the Q&A so that I can mark them as answered. Otherwise, just keep chiming in with the chat. At least that gives me some insight as I'm a solo lady over here to know that things are going well. Hi, Philip. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. And if anybody missed it, if we have any moms in the audience, happy belated Mother's Day to you all. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. So I am Kate Sutherland. I am with JWB Real Estate out of Jacksonville, Florida. I am incredibly excited and honored to have the opportunity to start our week off here together on this Monday, talking through something that I have an opportunity to strategize and plan out with my clients all the time, which is how to utilize and tap into equity. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at what it is, how you could potentially use it, and really break down kind of a before and after look at what happens when investors utilize one strategy in particular with their equity, which is a cash out refinance. My role over here at JWB, I have been with the team for a little over 7 years. So I actually have that client facing opportunity to be able to be on the phones with individuals. First and foremost, my strategy is learning about my clients on a more personal basis. I want to know who you are. I want to know what we're working towards doing and building and growing for you. Everybody has their own unique why. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to get to learn and know what our driving motivators are, because my hope is that I can help facilitate and engineer a plan that helps meet those goals, or maybe not. And that's okay too. At least I got an opportunity to get to introduce myself and my team and see what works or what might potentially not work. So that's what I get to do here on the day to day. JWB serves 1,700 turnkey clients out of Jacksonville. And we manage about 5,500 homes here. So this is the only market that we operate out of. And a strategy that we hear a lot is, how can I utilize the equity that I have in a real estate portfolio? What kind of options do I have? So I thought that's what we would do today. So I'm going to share my screens and I am going to get us started here. Thanks again for everybody for joining, and let's go. All right. Last time I did this, I did have to ask for a couple little kind of thumbs up to make sure that I was actually sharing the slides correctly. So if you all give me a little thumbs up or something in the chat to let me know that you all can see the slides, then I'm going to keep on moving with the understanding that we are all here good to go. So everybody raised a hand. Okay. Good to go. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for the hand raise. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I needed. Okay, let's do this. Excited, you guys. Thank you. Okay, first and foremost, I mentioned who I am and what my role is, but very important, every time that we are looking at making a decision when it comes to real estate or financial opportunities, please make sure that you are also doing your own due diligence and you are consulting the professionals to make sure that you're putting your place and your money in the right position. Obviously, we are all working together. That's why you all are here today, is to inundate yourselves with resources, do your due diligence, and that's exactly what we're always going to continue for you to do as well. Also had an opportunity to introduce JWB. Now, this subject for today is not specific to Jacksonville. It is not specific to JWB. What I can do is just offer the lens and the talk track that I get to have when I'm speaking with individuals on the phone, and to give you all some perspective as to who I am and where my team is. This is us. So our office operates out of downtown Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a very large city. So all of those blue little pins over there that you see on the map, those are homes that we manage. So I mentioned we're at about 55, 57 homes under management here in Jacksonville. Everything is within about a 10 to 12-mile radius of our downtown. This is the market that we have operated out of for 2 decades. So we celebrated 20 years back in February, which is a huge accomplishment. Also really neat to see the scale that we have achieved in one market alone. So a ton of knowledge here, a lot of insight. We have about 400 homes in our own portfolio. So we're experiencing this market right alongside our investors, and of course, have a huge opportunity to remain invested in the city because we need it to grow so that we can continue to be successful here. And the hope is we can make this city better, right? That's about 8,500-ish residents that we get to interact with. If we can help improve their lives and the lives of the homeowners here in Jacksonville, we can continue to make this city greater. I mentioned if you were here at the very beginning, I've got 3 little kiddos. So if they want to come back and call Jacksonville home and I got a hand in making the city better, that's pretty special. That's what we get to do for our folks. Okay, let's talk through options. Really cool opportunity as an owner of real estate. Now, folks in this audience, we may own real estate. We may be working towards acquiring our first purchase. There may be a more active side of your business where you are kind of in it, you are sourcing your deals, and the time and resources are there for that to be a more active part of your business. And then there's going to be folks in this audience that say, hey, I know I want to own a piece of real estate. I want to add that as a component of my portfolio. But I don't have the time and resources right now to do a ton of opportunity when it comes to the where, the how, and the management. And then you could have a turnkey provider come into play, which is what JWB offers for our solution for our clients. Okay. The important thing is, when you own real estate, you've got options, you've got tools. So that's what I wanted to do today, is just highlight a couple of those options, and then really, with the time that we have, do a deep dive into one of them particularly, but we can come back and we can look at the other options as well, because I think it's really neat. One of the questions that I hear more often on the phones with folks is, I like the sound of it. The idea seems great. However, I don't quite understand yet what impact that has on my portfolio. So I wanted to look at it through that lens to actually give a case study there. Okay. So let's talk through what the tools are, right? Cash out refinance. That's where we're going to spend quite a bit of time today. I really want to break down exactly what it was. I used to be a teacher, so you're going to have a little bit of teacher Kate come out. I apologize for that, but that is my passion. That's where I get the most fulfillment. Is really just being able to talk through, hey, let's see what our options are, because the answer is it's not a one size fits all solution, right? There's going to be a different opportunity for everybody. We got to make sure that we're partnering you with the right one at the right time. So cash out refinance, that is an opportunity to use the equity that you have in your portfolio, and we're going to talk through what equity is as well, without having to sell the asset. Okay. You can then use that equity as deployable capital towards your next purchase. So some key components to stand out in this is, you've got something that you have to tap into as the owner of the real estate, which is equity. We're going to figure out, how do you know how much equity that you actually have at any given point in time. And then the other neat thing about this opportunity is you don't have to sell the asset to use it. Okay, you have a beautiful thing in owning real estate, which is that if you're in the right place, the hope is that that asset, it's an asset, right? It's providing value to you and it is growing in value over time. The longer you hold it, right, you are kind of able to get into it at a certain price and fixed interest rate, right? If you're taking out a loan, that kind of locks you into that moment in time. But then the value of the market, hopefully, is continuing to go up. There's still a need because housing is a critical need for us as human individuals here. And so that allows you to want to keep holding it and maximize the overall value over time. Well, you can do both with this option. So that's what we're going to break down today. Okay. The second is a 1031 exchange. This is something that I hear a lot of folks looking to explore. It's a really great opportunity. When you sell real estate, typically you must pay taxes on what's called the gain, right? You were able to buy at one price, you sold it at another price, you take kind of the gains that you made from selling that property and you're taxed on them. Well, with a 1031 exchange, you can actually defer those property gain taxes by doing something called a 1031 exchange, where in this scenario, you're able to reallocate the capital that you made from that original sale. You can use that towards another, it does have to be what's considered a like for like purchase. So I can't sell my primary property to do this, but if I had another rental property in my portfolio, I could sell that and I could purchase another real rental property and completely have be able to defer the gains that I would have made or had to have been taxed on originally if I don't go through this. Very important that proper execution is taken into account. Uh, I will have folks that come to me and they say, can I do this? I sold the property 6 months ago. And now I'm thinking I want to do a 1031 exchange because I haven't bought anything else yet. Well, if that's the case, my first question is, did we get an intermediary, a qualified intermediary in place? Because if the answer is no, it's probably too late. This is a very specific set of rules and procedures that have to be followed. You need somebody that is qualified to be able to help facilitate and execute the 1031 exchange. They are technically the ones that are going to be holding the funds that you got from your original sale, and they are going to work with you through a very specific set of timelines that you have to be able to execute on this, close on your next property so that everything is done correctly. Otherwise, you are at risk of still having to pay some taxes on those gains. Okay. If you need a resource, please let me know. It is by no means, I've got folks that say, can I 1031 out of a property into Jacksonville, JWB? Absolutely. Do you have to use the individual QI, qualified intermediary, in our network? No. If you've got somebody that you've used in the past or you've been referred to, you can absolutely utilize them. Or if you just would like a referral to say, hey, this is something I'm potentially interested in, let me know. That is what I'm here for. I want to be a resource for you so we can absolutely make some introductions your way just to make sure if it is something you want to explore, you start it early, right? Start asking those questions early to see what makes the most sense for you. Okay, so that's an option is a 1031 exchange. This is a really cool one. This is going to be a moment where we would need a little bit more time to dive into how this works, but you can, really cool opportunity, you can do a purchase in your retirement account in a self-directed IRA. Okay. This is the use of your retirement funds to purchase real estate. Again, all of these have very specific components to ensure that they are done correctly. This is case in point, right? A self-directed IRA or a Roth IRA, that account, very big differentiation, that account can actually own real estate. Now, you do have to have a property manager managing that on your behalf. You are, as an individual, are not the owner of the properties that account is. So if you are buying cash, you can, use, if the capital is in that account, you can use that to buy a property. You can even take a loan out in your retirement account to purchase the real estate. It is a very specific type of loan. It's called a non-recourse loan. You think about the retirement account itself. There is no credit score. There is no social security number. Right? So if there was a moment in time where you were to default on that loan, the bank doesn't really have recourse to go after. Hence the name a non-recourse loan. Not every lender is going to be able to offer a product like that. We do have a lender within our network that offers this product. We would want to look at the specifics to qualify for that loan type. We would want to ensure that there is a comfort level of insulation with reserves. You can't just go deposit dollars into that account on a very frequent basis, right? So when maintenance or vacancy arise, you'd want to ensure that that account is self-sustaining enough to be able to withstand those expenses. Okay. So it's an option. It's a really great option. If it is something that you were unaware of or would like to explore, you would just want to start asking some questions and think, oh, okay, how could this benefit me and my portfolio and my goals? And again, just like with the 1031 exchange, if you were interested in doing that, then you let me know. I've got a lender within my network who can do that, not just for JWB properties. He's licensed in different states. So happy to share along contact information there if it is something that you are interested in. Robert asked a question. I'm just going to pause here before I go through the fourth option here about 1031 exchanges. How long is that tax deferred? Can you provide trusted people and or orgs for intermediaries? Yes, Robert, absolutely. So you're correct. You aren't There's not a moment where you aren't responsible for at some point having to pay the taxes on those gains, right? It's a deferral. So how long am I deferring taxes? Well, when you go to sell that next piece of real estate, then we're looking at the gains that you had been deferring up until that point. Now, the cool thing is you can 1031 exchange again and just continue that deferral process. So it would come, it would get recouped eventually when you were to go at the sale of the replacement property, unless you then 1031 exchange again and continue the deferral process. But Robert, I absolutely will get you over there. IPX Exchange is the group that we have used for our own 1031s as a company. It's where I refer my clients to. So I will send you over their information so that you can start asking some questions. Claudia is our gal. She's phenomenal. So I will make sure you're in good hands there. All right. I gotta say that that one is answered. Thank you so much for the question, Robert. All right, so let's get back into another option that we have. Very similar here with a cash out refinance. Okay, so this would be a home equity line of credit. And this is an option to very similar to the cash out refinance, where you want to keep that property. A 1031 exchange, that's the sale, right? I'm choosing to sell that asset. I don't want to have to pay the gains taxes on it, and then I'm going to buy a new asset, right? It's a complete replacement of that property. Okay. I will have clients sometimes say, oh man, I think I want to do a 1031 exchange. I'm having a rough year with this property. I my job is to talk through pros and cons, right? Let's talk strategy. Let's talk plan. Let's go back to what your overall goals were. Let's not let a moment in time be our complete decision maker and driving motivator. Let's actually see, hey, does that make the most sense for us right now? Because what you're giving up in terms of the original purchase price, the equity that you had, is that really worth us completely replacing that property out of your portfolio at this point in time? Yes or no. And we're gonna get folks that fall into both buckets there, but it's at least kind of thinking through, okay, let me not make an emotional pull right now to completely get rid of that property. Or does it make sense? Was that the exit strategy, the plan? Maybe I'm going from one market to the other where I can actually take one property valued at a higher amount and I can plug in a couple properties into a different market that are priced lower. That still plays. So if it's a scalability component, that can absolutely make a lot of sense. But what we don't want to do is show up thinking, hey, I've got four options here, right? These are all the tools that I've got in my toolbox. I'm going to use every single tool when I've got, my problem in front of me. These are not all the solution all at once. It's figuring out what's the right one for you. So a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, very similar in terms of a cash out refinance where you get to keep that property, which is great, your original property, if it makes sense. Another opportunity to tap into equity, which is what we're going to talk through today. And you do not have to replace the loan. Okay, in a cash out refinance, I'm going to show you what happens when you actually replace the original loan on that property with a new loan, and you can get that equity out that way. With a home equity line of credit, right? It's a line of credit, kind of like your credit card, right? You actually can utilize the amount of equity up to a certain percentage. The lender's going to want to see some of it stay with the property, but you can go up to a certain percentage. Anywhere I've seen it from 70% to 80% is the typical LTV, loan to value. I'll dive into that a little bit more here in just a bit as well to say this is the potential you have to use based off of how much of that credit, if you will, you're going to utilize. There is a rate that would be charged against that, an interest rate, and you are responsible for paying back what you borrowed with that interest rate tied to it it's typically about a shorter term that you'd have there. Maybe 5, 7 years is where I've seen it most recently. And you can do this on a rental or your primary. Okay. I would say for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, usually if you have a local credit union, you may get better rates there. Again, I'm an open book for you. I'm happy to give resources for lenders that do HELOCs on rentals. My only caveat is it's going to also be contingent on the states that they're licensed in. Okay. I am here in Florida, so I know my folks can do this in Florida, may or may not be able to do that in the state that your property is located in, but worth a conversation, worth a look at it for sure to see what makes the most sense. Okay. So those are a couple of the tools that you have in your tool belt. But like I mentioned before, the important thing isn't that we try to become masters of all right now to figure out how do I do this on every single property that I have in front of me, or if you're in that acquisition stage and you're looking at your first one, how exciting is it that man, when I get this one under my belt, look at the potential that I have in front of me to be able to use this to scale my portfolio from there. Really, really exciting stuff. All right, so let's really spend some time here with a cash out refinance. Very, very powerful option where JWB, we back in 2006 is when we got our start. Okay. And that was a market where we were able to acquire about 50 properties. And then shortly after that was the Great Recession, which at that point we kind of became accidental landlords, if you've heard that term, where it was very difficult to then sell. That was our original exit strategy, was thinking we were going to do a little bit more active in Burr and sell those properties. Well, our hand was a little forced with that market to keep the properties because selling, we definitely weren't making a profit there. So we retained them and tried to actually figure out, well, okay, what's it like actually keeping these as rental properties in a portfolio? And what our big eye-opening component there was, it is all about how you manage, right? If you're looking to hold on to these properties for any given period in time, your return is very contingent on how it's managed. And we were outsourcing that management and decided at that point in time, we have to provide a solution here and figure out how to do this ourselves. So we brought that in-house, and those 50 properties have now turned into a portfolio of about 400. A large portion of how we were able to do that is with this strategy, cash out refinance. Okay, this has been a real big talk track for me with my clients as of late that have bought, especially in the last couple years, that are now looking to say, "Hey, I'm a couple years into ownership. I'm really curious as to what my options are." It's a great exercise to have your portfolio kind of laid out in a way that you're able to see these components. I hope this will be helpful for us today because you really want to look at it on a property by property basis. But this is exactly how we scaled our portfolio to where we are now. So if you start to look at them as tools, the individual properties themselves and the options that you can apply to each one, it's phenomenal. Okay, so a cash out refinance, we talked through this a little bit, but this is the one I'm going to spend some time on here. This is the replacement of the current mortgage with a new mortgage, okay, to take out the difference in cash. I think that's something I'm going to keep going back to is I had a loan. That loan doesn't just go away. Okay, of course, we do have to make sure that that is paid back. There's a payout of that original, and I'm going to be recasting a new mortgage or a new loan on my property. Okay, so how do we do it, right? We're going to look at a review of the current value of your property. You want to less out whatever remaining loan balance there was. And when I say less out, it doesn't mean I'm just taking that number out. I'm actually having to pay that component off. Okay. That difference. So your value of your current value of the property minus out the amount that you had left on that loan, that difference right there is your equity. Okay. So when you hear that referred to, that's exactly what we are talking about. Lenders will allow you to borrow against that equity to pull cash out by placing a new mortgage on the property. So you're essentially using your property as leverage with the bank, right? That's kind of their yes as to why they would allow you to do something like that. Okay, so there is a new payment that you want to be cognizant of. There are new rates. There's a lot of things that go into it, which is where I get asked a lot of questions as to, well, I like the idea of that. It is neat to be able to not have to really come out of pocket. If we're in a scaling acquisition mindset to say, I want to go from this property to multiple properties within my portfolio, can I do that without having to bring any additional capital to the table? The answer may be yes. And it's through this tool right here with a cash out refinance where you may be able to pull everything that you'd need from the equity or at least a large component of it. Okay. Typically, you do need to leave a component of an amount of the equity in that property. Okay. So the lenders aren't, it's they're not going to, for the most part, let you pull out 100% of the equity to use there. So they want to see a cushion of some of that remain with the property. Typically, it's between about 25 to 30% that they want to see stay there. And that is referred to that loan to value. So that's 70 to 75% is usually what you can max, your max loan to value. Now, another really cool lever, right? You don't have to go that high. If you're pulling out their max LTV, there's a rate that is going to come, an interest rate with that new loan that your lender is going to give you. And that may differ, right? Your rate could look different if you say, hey, I didn't realize I was sitting on so much equity here. I'm actually only going to pull out 50% for my LTV. Then you may have a different interest rate. So we can work with your lenders to say, hey, can I run it through a couple different scenarios based off of how much equity you have? Now, another component to remember here. Usually it's about 3 years in based off of the market, what you bought the property at, based off of your ARV. If you are in a more active space, and you are putting a lot of renovations into the property and you may be able to flip it at a higher ARV, then you might have more equity to tap into sooner. Speaking from the clients that I speak to on a regular basis here in Jacksonville, if they're purchasing a turnkey property from JWB, meaning the acquisition has already taken place, the construction has already taken place, the CO was already given. There's already a signed lease in place. I'm buying it at that stage, right? That's where I get to come in and work with folks. Then at that point, if you're buying a JWB property, typically about 3 years in is when we're starting to explore this option to then use the equity to potentially scale and go towards the down payment of another property. Okay. I had a question from Robert. Great question. If the property's paid off, can there be a cash out refinance? Yes, there can. Really good question. What that looks like, right? I'm essentially at this point not replacing a loan. I am placing a loan. So you have gone from, and the strategy has to make sense. You've gone from not giving up any of the income that you are making. If it's a rental, you can do a cash out refinance on your primary as well, right? I'm kind of thinking of it from a rental perspective where you have your income coming in and your expenses, but you're not having to pay off any sort of mortgage because you own it free and clear. If you then take that, do a cash out refinance, then you have way more equity because you're not subtracting out any additional loan balance that you'd have to pay off. However, now you are placing a loan on that home and you would be now introducing yourself to a payment that you didn't previously have, a mortgage payment. So kind of think of it in that frame where, okay, well, I've gone from no mortgage payment to a mortgage payment. Yes, I got to pull out the equity and utilize it. Yes, I still own it. I just have to be cognizant of any additional purchase that I'm making from here. I want to kind of now factor in what the loan payment is on your original property. But you can absolutely do that. Yes. Very, very good question. I have worked with folks too that own the real estate in their retirement account. I think it's important to kind of talk through, again, you just want to talk strategy with somebody if it makes sense for you, because I worked with a gal 2 weeks ago-ish, and she was doing her cash out refinance. Her properties are owned in her self-directed. So now she's going to do a cash out refinance. She's not doing it. Her self-directed is doing it. So what that would have to happen in that scenario is her self-directed is doing the cash out refinance. That's pulling out the equity, but it is the self-directed's equity to use. She's using it for two more purchases. So what she cannot do is take a cash out refinance from her self-directed, kind of deposit those funds for in her personal bank account, and then buy in her personal name. Okay, so just want to ensure that we are making sure that we're following the right rules there. And if it is a property that is owned in an account like that, anything like this that you may be able to do would still have to be able to all kind of live within that type of account as well. Okay. All right. So let's talk through preparing for this. We talked through what it is, but how do you prep for this? Okay, cost. There is a cost. This is a loan, right? Yes, I am taking the original loan, or in Robert's question, I may be placing a loan on this property for the first time, or you had already accelerated your pay down and own it free and clear. Regardless of how we got here, we're looking at this as a new loan, and with that comes closing costs. Okay. So I got with one of the lenders within our network, John. He's fabulous. And I said, hey, John, as I prepare for this, I'd love to be able to tell the audience about what percentage should we be expecting for closing costs for a refinance. So he said, let your folks know anywhere between, it's typically about 3 to 3.5%. The little squiggle is the approximate, not a negative. But between about 3 to 3.5% of your loan amount is what you would want to be considering for closing costs. And then, of course, there is going to be some prepaids for taxes and insurance. And I'll show you this with actual numbers here in just a bit. Okay, the value. Most of the time, your lender, if you are doing a cash out refinance, is going to require an appraisal to support the new value, the current value of your property. You can still get an idea of what that is. I'll get questions all the time. What's the best way for me to have an understanding of what my fair market value is right now? I would encourage you to go to a couple different sources. You can do the Zillows. I think it is very important that you are thinking about it, though, from the type of comparables that you're pulling. If you're pulling comparables of what's on the market, you're not really getting a fair picture of how an appraiser would look at it. An appraiser doesn't go pull values from current listings. They go to actual closings, closed sales. So we try to pull within the last 6 months what's actually closed. That is going to give you a better understanding of comparable values. And then from there, you can get more specific. When we're pulling comparable market values, we're trying to keep everything within about a 1 to 2 mile radius. We're looking at the square footage, give or take 100, 200 square feet of the square footage of the property, as well as your bed bath count. So you can do that. You can go to Redfin, you can go to Zillow. Those are all sources that will allow you to pull some comparable sales to have an idea. Sometimes the lender may have a software or something like that they can kind of underwrite the property and bypass the appraisal. But that I would say is a little more few and far between. Typically that lender is going to want to see an appraisal, and there's a cost to that, right? So that's kind of back in that preparation of the 3.5% of your loan amount, knowing that there is an appraisal that would be required as well, just because the bank wants to see that value is supported. Payment. Okay, so you will have a payment here. That's just what I was sharing earlier, Robert. You don't have one now, which is great if you own the property free and clear, but there will be one with a cash out refinance. Okay, there is going to be a new interest rate that is going to be dependent on the current value of the property as well as the loan balance. So how much are you taking? And that's where I was sharing earlier. It's a lever to pull. You can max out if you need all of that capital, that's 75% LTV. Or you can lower that a little bit if you don't need all of that to tap into at this point in time, and that may lower your interest rate. So just depending on what the value is, that could have an impact on what the actual rate would be. Okay, so with that, we're going to look at what is you may often hear referred to as the PITI, the principal and the interest payments, along with your taxes and your insurance. And depending on the scenario that you find yourself in, I work for a turnkey investment company where we are also retaining the management for our clients. So we are managing the properties on the back end for you as well. So what I wanted to do is highlight how I look at this with my clients, which is also that expense for the property management cost. Okay. And then your timeline. Typically to close on the refinance, it takes about 30 days or less. Now, with our folks, I get the question asked sometimes about, can I do both? The answer is yes. You can identify a property if you are doing a refinance as well, kind of like a 1031 exchange, right? There's an identification process. I will say with our scenario here, what typically happens is I'll introduce the client to the lender. I'll let them know, hey, we want to potentially tap into a cash out refinance here. Can we get that conversation started? What we'd want to do is go through if we're doing this, right? I need to have a good understanding to prepare that client for what rates are, what potential new PITI payments that we have to even see if it makes sense, because then we're going to start the appraisal process. Finances are going to come into play with the cost there to actually start closing this out. But once we got that appraisal value, we'll know for sure exactly how much the equity that we have to be able to work with. And with our lenders, I have clients that have gone under contract and they are able to already be under contract. And then as soon as that refinance closes, we've got the funds in place. Our title company is aware of what's going on, and then we can close on the new property shortly after. So it's not always a scenario saying, I've got to start the refinance, I've got to completely let that close, and then I can start looking at inventory. I would say if this is something that you would want to potentially pursue, there is a possibility that you can do them simultaneously. However, there could be some risks involved. I've been through it too with clients that say, "Hey, let's just identify. I would love to get something locked up under contract," and then that appraisal value comes in a little different than we were thinking that it was going to, based off of, the searches that we had at our fingertips from the Zillows and the Redfins. So. It's possible, but there's absolutely some risk that would come involved if you go that direction. All right, let's do it from a property level view. Uh, I pulled a client here from JWB that is open and willing to sharing his specifics. So I thought that would be helpful for you all to see kind of how this could play out. I did get a question asked here. Oh, PITI, great question, LaSalle. That is your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. So P, principal, I is interest, T is taxes, uh, I is insurance. Sorry if I said interest, insurance. Those are your two I's, okay? So that's essentially your mortgage payment. Most of the time when you're doing a loan, you're escrowing in taxes and insurance, so it's typically paid out in one kind of lump sum. What you are replacing with a cash out refinance is the PI, not the private investigator, but your principal and your interest. That is essentially resetting, right? I'm paying off my original and I'm resetting, restarting with a new loan. Your tax and insurance typically aren't going to change, right? Kind of mid um, cash out refinance here mid-year. That's usually done. Your taxes, of course, once a year, the tax appraiser is going to come in and do everything like that. You've already paid your insurance costs for the year, the premiums there. So usually they're all lumped together because the taxes and insurance are typically escrowed, but that is what I'm referring to with PITI, and I'll show it to you too on a property level view here. Very good question, though. All right. Let's do it. Okay, so for this property, to give some context, this was a home that was purchased in 2022. Original purchase price here was $230,000. So if this was a home that we said, okay, this is in my portfolio, I think I've seen JWB has tools that we can do this for our clients, but I've got clients that have homes in other markets, and it's just kind of an Excel sheet of saying, hey, here's all of my addresses, here is all of my original purchase prices. Once a year, I'm going to go in and do a fair market value little research on my own to see what it looks like current values are looking like. Obviously, if markets are changing, maybe we up that frequency then to more than just once a year, but at least once a year, let's do an under the hood look at your portfolio, see what you were at there. What was your original interest rate? What was your all of these things that I'm going to show you here, kind of lay that out in one giant sheet. And that allows you to shift from real estate owner to investor, right? Now I'm looking at this portfolio as a whole. I'm understanding and analyzing where I have potential to be able to tap into this property. It may be my 1031 exchange time. This property down here, this might be my time to cash out on a cash out refinance because I've been sitting on a lot more equity than I knew in the past. This one right here, I've got a little bit of a higher interest rate on it, so cash out refinance may make sense on that one too. Because if we start looking at those as tools, right, I'm not locked into forever on any one component amongst any piece of real estate in my portfolio. I'm constantly looking at the opportunity each one can present to me to see what makes most sense for a scalability mindset. Okay, which is really, really fun to do. So let's look at this one. 2022 purchase, $230,000. We do this for our clients. We just pulled updated fair market values because what we're doing is we're trying to look beyond just Zillow and Redfin, right? Those are public sources. We have the opportunity as well to pull in the multiple listing services, the MLS, where we can pull actual comps from closings across that, where agents are providing those values to give us more real-time and accurate data. Plus, we are here. We are in Jacksonville. We have such a strong pulse in the homes that we've sold, in the properties that we manage for our clients. So really, really strong opportunity for us to know this market because we're in it, right? So just did this for this client. So from 2022 to April of this year. Value of this home is now sitting at 290,000. There is a current loan balance on this property of $163,256. Okay, so let's kind of keep that in mind. I'll show you all exactly what we're going to do with that number here in just a minute. The current interest rate on that property is 5.75. I do speak with a lot of folks that think that they may want to go this route and they say, oh, but man, I got into that 3% interest rate and I just can't let it go. My first response is going to be, well, why? Right? What was the original intention? A lot of times that why makes a lot of sense. Maybe that is a lower interest rate that is yielding you a amount of monthly income that you're netting, a cash flow, if you will, that you are then putting to work immediately. You are actively accelerating the debt pay down on another property. Right? You are actively using that income for the phone bill, whatever it may be. I have three little kiddos, so goodness me, it would be going to work actively for myself right now personally. However, other folks, that's not income that is being really used or tapped into. It's nice to have, but if the overall goal was, hey, I'm still trying to work up to that eighth property or to X amount of dollars in passive income a month, and we aren't quite yet there, then I'm going to challenge, is it makes sense for us to actually really potentially look at that 3% interest rate? If that means that's where I have the most equity, I'm willing to use that as a tool to then go pull out and leverage more so I can add another rocket booster on my whole portfolio so that I can get the value that I truly wanted it to be because I don't need it on a monthly basis. I'm at my 15, 20-year horizon, right? This is my generational component of my portfolio. So I'm okay. Again, it's case by case basis, not one size fits all, but at least something to consider and really thoughtfully think through when you're looking at this. Okay, so the question on PITI. This is a breakdown here. So current principal, interest, taxes, insurance costs. So on a monthly basis right now, this client's paying a little north of $1,000. But of that $1,000, about 400 of that, it's not a negative, it's approximate. Approximately 400 of that is coming just from the taxes and insurance. Okay, so I'm going to separate that out here in a minute from the principal and interest piece because that's tied to the loan, the current loan on the home. And then the taxes and insurance, I want to kind of separate out because I am going to need to recoup that back and plug that back in here in just a little bit. This home is managed by JWB. JWB has a 10% property management fee. So current rent on the property is $17.90. So the property management fee, 10% of rents collected there would come in at $179. Now I'm trying to look at this from a monthly perspective, which is why I included this there. Okay, so that's the current breakdown of the property itself. This would be something like I mentioned, I'd encourage if you own real estate and you haven't done this yet, start organizing your portfolio in a way where you kind of have a column of these pieces so that you have a good idea of where each property is sitting as well. A rocket booster for my portfolio. I know, how fun is that? Do clients ever convert their self-directed IRA funds? I had a little chat here from Donna, so I was just going to pause so I can make sure that I can get there. Do clients ever convert their self-directed IRA funds to a pure real estate holding without the self-directed IRA at the appropriate age? Yes. There's several nuances that come with the self-directed. I do work with folks, I've worked with folks that they're getting to an age where required minimum distributions, RMDs are starting to take place. It makes sense to start pulling from distributions or convert. I would just say, Donna, it's very specific and unique to each individual based off of age, runway, when RMDs are supposed to start kicking in. So with that, I would say if you have a provider that you're potentially looking at, I would just say try to schedule some one-on-one time with them so you could talk through your options or your CPA there because there are definitely some nuances that could come with that based off of your age, kind of taking into account what taxes would look like based off of the type of account that it is. Yes, I've worked with clients that do it. It's just going to look a little different with each individual and based off of kind of where we're at in the timeline. All right, so let's go back to the cash out refinance option of how much we can actually pull out. So if your current property value is at $290,000, I need to know what's my potential here. This is not, I haven't done anything, I haven't executed anything to where I'm now on the hook for closing costs, refinance, appraisals, anything. This is just a strategy to start doing on your own. We do it with our clients too, and the JWB umbrella, which is a fun exercise to be able to do. So I'm going to look at this from the max, right? The max I could take is 75% loan to value. So in that scenario, I'm just taking 75% of the current property value. Okay, 75% of 290,000 is $217,500. Okay, so with that, that could essentially be my new loan amount. Okay, because I'm taking out a loan on as much equity as I can if I'm maxing that out. Now, you could do this scenario at a 60% LTV, a 50% LTV. It could look different. For these purposes, I figured let's kind of look at the max potential that we have. Okay, there was that original loan. Like I mentioned, I can't forget that that existed and still does exist. So in this scenario, the current loan of $163,256, I need to ensure that I have paid that off. Then I'm able to see what my actual estimated cash out could be. I'm also including in this number for us here today, those closing costs that I told you to start to prepare for. So I took that 217,500. I'm lessing out the current loan that was on that property. Again, this could be for a rental or your primary. If you have your primary, you own a primary home, you could do this in this scenario as well. That alone, 217,500 minus 163,256, that leaves me with about $54,244 that I could use usable equity. And then I'm going to take out the 3% that I had on there for the closing costs. So with that, that left me at about $47,719 that I could use. Okay. That I think I just want to make, I know you all have heard it, but I keep going back to ensuring we are accounting for that payoff of the original loan. So pretty cool, right? That was $48,000-ish that you had sitting there that you can use. And in my case, what I talk through with clients is, hey, is that how much of that could that go towards the down payment of another acquisition, right? Maybe you're a little bit more active. Maybe that is the cost of you being able to source a new deal. I always tell folks the deal is whatever fits best with what your goals are. So does that look like another turnkey purchase with JWB is kind of what I'll go through with my clients. And we're able to look at, hey, let's kind of think through average inventory right now. What's my typical cost? How much of that is actually going to go to cover a new purchase so that really not having to come out of pocket because I paid off the original loan with that equity. I'm paying the closing costs with that equity in that home, and I still have about $48,000 left over to go towards something, a new rocket booster, Robert, which is really exciting. Okay. Now, with that though, it doesn't, it's really fun. That's really exciting. And there are some components to be cognizant of when it comes to the payment. And so that's really where I get the most questions of like, okay, that sounds great. But what actually happens to that property because I have a new loan on it? So we're going to take a peek at that. Okay, let's go through a couple other things that I got popped up here in the chat. Can I invest my 401k? The answer is yes. I would give a couple follow-up questions that are, is it tied with an active employer or a previous employer? If it's previous, I would say we roll that over to self-directed, which would allow that account to then invest in the real estate. It does exist for you to be able to do something called a 401k loan. It does not always make the most sense for folks. You're essentially paying your future self back for the interest that you have to pay back that loan. It's a certain dollar amount. I believe you have to have, and it's been a while since I walked through this with someone. I believe the minimum is 50,000 that you'd have to have in that account. But there are also if in the event that you are no longer with that employer, interest rates are typically a little bit higher. You still have to ensure that you've paid back the dollars on that loan. So doesn't always make sense for folks to really tap into it from an active employer standpoint. That way, you're usually pretty limited in what you can invest in with an active employer's 401k. But if it's with a previous employer, you can absolutely roll that over and look at doing either a cash purchase or leveraging in that account. Donna, did you say you could do this with a primary residence too? Yes, you do. Yes, you can. No, it does not have to be paid off. So this exact process that we're doing right now, this applies to your primary purchase, primary home as well. Whatever your loan balance is, that's what you're subtracting out. So if you have a mortgage on your current primary residence, yes, you can do this. Can a primary have a HELOC sitting on it as well? Yes, you can. Yes, you can do that. And HELOCs, typically, historically, most of the conversations I had with folks were for HELOCs on their primary. As of late, it really started opening up where folks were starting to tap into more of that for their rental as well. Now, again, it just comes down to rates are a little bit higher there on the HELOC versus on the cash out refinance. That's kind of your more traditional rates that you'd see. A HELOC, they could be a little bit higher. I've seen them anywhere from 7 to 9% as of late. And you just want to ensure that if you do have a local credit union, I would always just encourage folks to start there just to have an idea because you may get a little bit more of a competitive rate versus going with a more traditional lender in that sense of it. All right, Sherry. She said, I have purchased 3 rentals with a HELOC, pay the HELOC off with cash out refinance, and then bring back to zero. How cool is that? Sherry, that's amazing, right? Like that is exactly what this does. This power, if we could do like the clappy claps for her, that's amazing. Like that's what I mean. When you start going from the ability, yay, yes, like support each other. How cool is this? When you start going from that, hey, I'm looking at it from an individual basis, like even as an owner of your primary, you are a real estate investor, right? Like shift that mindset to really know I have really, really cool options out there that I can utilize, which is just amazing. And so to be able to tap and plug into a couple of them at once is really, really powerful. So congratulations to you for being able to kind of plug and play a couple different strategies here. because it's an opportunity to really analyze it on a case by case basis to see what makes the most sense for you and put you in that position of, okay, what can I do next, which is awesome. So congratulations there. Donna, if you have a HELOC on your primary, what are the LTVs you can have for a cash out refinance? I think it's going to vary on a case by case basis. If you have a HELOC on your primary, what are the LTVs? It's you can still pull a certain percentage of because the equity's not gone, right? So I think that's another piece to really think through as well, where you still have equity at play. It's just a matter of how much is available. So I would want to, if we could, Donna, either myself and you, or if you're considering this, I think it would just be a little bit more of a diagnosis to say I currently have this at play, and it's not only how much equity do I have to then be able to tap into, because you can have more than one HELOC, right, going on the property. So yes, we'll have a conversation for sure. But I think it's very important to also just know my biggest thing is I want to be cognizant of the payments associated with each. Because yes, it's exciting and it's an object right in front of our face to say, whoa, I have almost $50,000 I can work with here. But let's not forget that there's a payment associated with that. So just want to be cognizant of what that looks like so that whatever the next kind of phase into what we're doing makes the most sense for being able to at least offset that, not put you in a place that we've over leveraged, because that can get a little dicey. We wouldn't want to put you in that position by any means. Okay, let's jump back in here. And let's talk about this after, right? Like what would that look like post refi if we did that on this property? And this is exactly what we were just talking through. All right, so I am still using that maxed out LTV with a new loan amount of $217,500. That was 75% of the new value of that property. I'm just using a rate that I had my lender in my network say, hey, if I was having a client do a cash out refinance right now, what could they expect for the new rate? It's these are the same rates that we're using across the purchase on the front end for somebody, even not named cash out refinance. Another lever to pull. It's amazing once you really start exploring all these options, how much is out there. But 6% would be kind of your par rate, your standard rate. He did let me know, even for cash out refinance, you can still pay more to buy that interest rate down. It may make sense for you, it may not. A totally different topic for another point in time. I didn't include that because the reality is there's also an additional cost. So I don't want to increase your closing costs to account for that if we wanted to buy down that rate even lower, but just kind of standard rate right now with let's plan for about a 6%. If you remember on this property, the previous rate was 5.75. Now, this is that principal and interest component. I went from where it was about $1,000 a month, but 400 of that was coming just from taxes and insurance. Now, if I go through with this, my new estimated principal and interest, this is coming from the lender. This isn't Kate that runs all of this component for you. A new estimated principal and interest payment alone would be about $1,300 a month. That's a shift, right? That's $300 more. Even I'm not even including taxes and insurance. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like when I include that back in. Okay, so that 1304 was just principal and interest, but I got to bring back that $400 I was paying for taxes and insurance. Well, now I've gone from about $1,000 a month in a mortgage payment to about $1,700 a month in a mortgage payment. If I have any Charlotte folks out there, the 704 made me smile. That's where I'm originally from. So 1704 is your new monthly principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, your new PITI. That's a difference. Okay, that's about a $700 increase. That is where to what Donna and I were kind of going back and forth within the chat. That's a big swing. So it has to make sense. It has to make sense from the property's standpoint. It has to make sense from the portfolio standpoint. The last thing that I would want to do is just say, go get it, go do it. Let's go. And be very bullish on just kind of attacking this opportunity without thinking through it full picture. And of course, my hope is that I can always help my clients scale and grow their portfolio, because a lot of times this does make sense, and I'll show you how and why it would. But long story short, it's important to be cognizant of that. Let's not forget this client has JWB managing their properties, so there is a property management fee. So I'm going to include that back in for a new estimated monthly expense of about 1883. Okay. So made a shift, but what did it do for me? Right? What did that allow me to tap into by going through? And if I were to actually do the cash out refinance, why? Okay. My current rent on this property was 1790. So I'm now no longer increasing, I'm not netting, right? As much as I was, if anything, I'm actually putting some money back into this property. I've gone from a potentially cash flow positive situation to, well, now I'm cash flow negative on this property alone. And that goes back to my, let's talk through that. What were those dollars being used for? Was that actively used? Was that something that you weren't actually tapping into? What's our comfort level on that? Does it make sense when I look at it from a property specific standpoint or portfolio standpoint? Are there other properties that you own, other income that you have coming in that can help offset that? We have to see if it makes sense. This is why I would say with my clients when I'm running through it that it may, okay? It might. The answer isn't going to be it always does. The answer is let's actually review it together. So let me show you. This is a snapshot. And I do apologize because this is specific to what I have at my fingertips with our clients, where we have this tool where we can actually look at an opportunity for what we call harvesting the equity, right? Where we can look at this passive income tool to say, this is the number of properties that we have. What happens? What are the scenarios that I have across the properties that I have with you all to refinance? If I do it, what does that do for my overall portfolio and goals? Okay. All of our conversations start around your goals. So what we do is we look at the current amount of properties that you have. This is a before and after snapshot for this client where are we currently in terms of the percentage completion of your goal. But let's look at that third row of the current monthly passive income. And this is me saying if I added one property to your portfolio, this is a JWB property. That's what I have to work with over here. All right, if I add one more, look at the difference in that proposed monthly income. All right, I've taken you from 306 to 146. Now, you may be in the audience saying, well, that math doesn't math with what you just showed us. And that's because that client doesn't just have one property. Okay, so that monthly income is a combination of the income that they are getting amongst from three properties that they own with us currently. So that's why you see that current number at three, currently bringing in $300 a month. With this shift, I'm saying you're potentially now going down. You're losing about $200 a month ish, right? To go down to 146. And your total portfolio equity right now, you've gone from 249, 459. Why did it go down? Well, because I pulled, right? I pulled equity out of it to allow me to scale into another purchase. So why would we do this? Why would this make sense? Well, the answer is here, right? It's not for some folks, the amount that they're netting on a monthly basis is worth it to really look down here at that proposed portfolio value and equity today versus if I'm holding on to these for another, 10, 20 years, I just pulled us in the middle there at 15, that value, that's the true game-changing number that I'd rather be able to add on to today to get myself here as quickly as I possibly can. Because every minute that we're waiting or delaying and postponing the next acquisition, that timeline to get to that overall goal in your portfolio's value is getting delayed too, right? The quicker we can get into that, if you're in that asset class of real estate that is known to grow in value, well, I want to try to front load as many acquisitions as I can to maximize on how long I'm going to hold on to these and the growth. So if you look at it in a couple different angles, right, it is immediate impact to myself, my finances, my family's finances. If that is putting you in a position where that doesn't make sense, that's great. You just did yourself a phenomenal service of running through the exercise to know that and to have an idea of, okay, well, it's there if and when it makes sense, but now's not the time. Or this might be, I talked to a gal not too long ago who she had done a reno, she was active, she did the reno, and she was sitting on nearly $1 million worth of equity. And she's like, I had no idea. How cool is this? This is my son's legacy. This is generations and grandkids. And it's a really, really, really powerful opportunity to just analyze. And I hope that that's what we were able to do here today is to show, hey, here's one example of how to do that is to take the components that you have in front of you and start to say, does it make more sense for me on this property or this property? Or if I'm about to acquire my first, how cool is it that I get to do this, in a couple months, in a year or 2 years down the road to see the options that I have here? So by no means do I think this is going to apply and work for everybody. Would I encourage everybody to do the process and the analysis? Yes. Do I think that we need to then go take all of that capital that you have and you immediately put it to work in this capacity? Probably not. But at least I think having a conversation and awareness of your portfolio is a beautiful thing to be able to see the options that you have in front of you because looking at it from this perspective is really neat, right? If you are in a real estate investment for a buy and hold, which some of you, that's just not the phase of your portfolio yet, you're more active, that's great. If you are a little bit more passive, and this could be a potential to say, hey, I would like a little piece of my portfolio to be that buy and hold, then we're looking at it more along the lines of this line item down here with that projected value 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Okay. So why it works, if we have that portfolio mindset, scalability of not always having to just come out of pocket. And I get that question a lot in the front end conversations with folks saying, I know it's real estate. I'm not questioning I want to invest in real estate. I'm trying to source the capital to do so. And a lot of folks in this audience are you all have put yourselves in a great position to be a little bit more active. You've got some trying to get that capital working for you a little faster right now. And then maybe this is your play, a couple years down the road to then have some diversification for both the active and a little bit more of that hands off, your steady Eddie consistent. This is my 15-year play that I've got, and I've got a mix of both, which is great. So scalability, it allows us to do that with the hope of not having to come any, if some, out of pocket to be able to scale into your next. And then what does owning another piece of real estate do for you? Well, it gets those 5 profit centers working for you. All right, you've got your home price appreciation, you've got your net rental income, that's your cash flow. What are you netting on a monthly basis? If you've got a loan, which in this case you will, all right, this is a cash out refinance, so there's a loan at play somewhere. You've got the resident paying down the principal component as you're fixed into your interest rate. They're helping contribute to those payments as well through principal pay down. And then you have opportunities to have in even more tax savings, write-off opportunities through your standard depreciation, things like that. We talk through 1031 exchanges as a totally separate way to defer capital gains taxes. And then you've got that hedge against inflation as you're locking into today's pricing on everything. And we know that those costs of everything and all of those goods are going up around us. So to get all 5 of those things working on your behalf, if you're able to add another asset into your portfolio is really exciting. So with that, I hope that this was helpful. I hope it was fun for you all to kind of see it from a property perspective with some numbers and before and after. Of course, I am here. My team is here. I know I've got Robert that I'm going to reach out to with some IPX exchange contact information. Donna and I hope we're going to chat. I'm going to pull back up the Q&A just to make sure that I have not missed anything. But in the interim, I've got some contact information up there. But biggest thing is you all are here today. It looks like we've got about 40 folks that just good on you. This is amazing that you are here. You are putting yourself and your goals and your dreams to the forefront, taking the time to invest in yourself. And I think that is something that you all should be really, really encouraged by, proud of, to get to celebrate each other, to hear some different strategies that even this audience and group is using is really, really neat from my perspective to get to hear. And this is just an amazing, amazing group of folks to be able to be a part of. So thank you for giving me your time and attention on this Monday. I do appreciate it. It's not lost on me that time is a precious resource. So thank you for sharing some of yours with me. All right, let's look at the question and answer. Ideally, from our, do we want the net cash from the new properties that we invest to cover the payment for the property that we use the equity from? Answer is maybe. I think it depends on your goal, right? It depends on your portfolio. You may have a combination, a hybrid portfolio. I've got clients that own three properties free and clear. This is they're going to take leverage out on one, do a cash out refinance on one, but they still have enough cash flow coming from those other two properties to offset the mortgage from the cash out refinance. And then we're looking at what the next purchase is going to be able to do for you. So it is such a case by case scenario. I wish I could run it differently for you, Robert, but I think that's also when it comes time to, okay, let's look at the options that we have. Your LTV that you take, that could be something that we look at to say, well, at this, if I maxed out the LTV, I have an idea of what the payments are here, but maybe I don't need to max that out, right? Maybe I've got capital coming from I'm taking 50,000 from the cash out refinance plus another 25,000 I have over here. Whatever the case may be, I think it's just kind of understanding what your portfolio is already doing on your behalf. If the answer is I was utilizing the monthly income that I had on that portfolio for something pretty active in my life at this point in time, and then we look at doing a cash out refinance, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that I am taking away some of that cash flow in a short term moment in time. I'm taking some of that away from you to maximize the later future versions of ourselves, dollars and cents, right? So I think it depends. It depends on the property. It depends on the asset. It depends on all of the expenses that you're accounting for to ensure that we are taking all things into account. The old, what you were used to netting, and that's kind of in the vision that I have of those spreadsheets that that you build out. Have that column to say this is what I'm currently netting. This is what would happen as you saw. This is we do that for the clients through the tool that we have. Let me go backwards a second. Right here. This is what I would, and this is across their portfolio. So you can do it on the property by property basis to say this is what I was currently at. This is what I'm projected to be at. Am I actually covering the cost of that new mortgage I put on my original property, plus what kind of asset am I getting myself into? Am I cash flow positive on that? Is that one break even? Because we want to know how much that new property could potentially be going back to help offset the payments that you now have on the original. So a lot of strategizing and planning that goes into it, but it's going to be different for each individual when we're looking at it. Let me scoot back to this one here as I go back into our chat. Oh, thank you all. Yes, God bless. You all are amazing. I am so grateful for your time. This is just such a fun part of my month to be able to be in front of you. So thank you guys. You're the best. Carlos, so you need to add the HELOC to the current loan minus the current veil to arrive at the equity, right? A home equity line of credit is similar. Yes, you to figure out the amount of equity that you need, right? Everything that we did today was a cash out refinance. That's replacing the loan. Thank you, Donna. That's replacing a loan for a cash out refinance. So current value minus out your original loan, and I'm minusing it out because we're paying it. We're paying it off, right? So I got to pay that off to see how much do I have left after I do that. For a home equity line of credit, a little different. That's you are just looking at what the value of the same, I guess, process to know how much equity you have in it. But in a HELOC scenario, you're not actually having to pay off the original loan. We still need to honor it when we're looking at the amount of equity you have to tap into. But essentially, I'm just now looking at, okay, if I've got this much equity to use as a line of credit, how much of it do I actually want to use? You don't have to use all of it. If I had $100,000 in equity to use, maybe I only need 50,000 of it for whatever I need in that moment in time. If it's a down payment on a new property, well, then that's $50,000 worth of credit, if you will, that you've used on that equity. Well, just like a credit card, I'm going to have interest payments that I have to pay back on just that amount that I used. But I did not replace I didn't get rid of my old loan. I did not have to sell that property to do so. But the actual interest rate that I'm paying is like a credit card, right? Or your interest payments are probably a little bit higher than they are if you were to do something. But so many nuances that go into it, Carlos. You think about how many years you had left on that original loan. Well, in most cases, you're recasting a totally new 30-year fixed rate note on that property. So timelines, all things come into play. But for a HELOC, it's a little different. Yes, I do need to take into account the amount of equity that I have at play because I don't actually own all of that yet if the bank still has some of it and the mortgage payment that I had tied to it. I just don't have to account for a whole new mortgage payment. I'm just accounting for the equity I'm using for a HELOC plus the interest payments to pay back what I've used in that line of credit. So happy to talk through it more in depth. It can get a little confusing if you're not actually doing it with your numbers, which I very much understand. So happy to be able to take folks through it on a more individualized basis. That's what I'm here for. But with that, I will just say thank you all so much. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for your kind words, your encouragement. We just continue to boost each other up. That's the most that we can do in this world today is be here for each other, encourage folks, give folks the pat on the back because what you all are doing is an amazing thing. So thank you for your time. I am so excited to be here again with you next month. And with that, I wish you all the very, very, very best day. Talk soon.